This video is brought to you by Skillshare. Now that the dust has mostly settled from the general election last week, it's worth looking forward to the next few weeks and months, and what it means for each of the major parties. For Keir Starmer, things couldn't be looking better. He's in office, he's selected his cabinet, and he's already started setting out his policy platform. Similarly, for Farage and his Reform UK party, things are also looking good. They gained a respectable 5 seats at the election and will soon be a legitimate party in the House of Commons, able to criticise Labour's legislation and attempt to humiliate the new Prime Minister at PMQs. However, for the Conservative Party, things don't look all that rosy. They've achieved the fewest seats they've ever won at a general election. They're out of power, and another Tory leadership election is on the horizon. So in this video, we're going to have a look at the plan for the Tory leadership election, when it's going to happen, what this will mean for the party as a whole, and who is currently in a good position to win it. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. Now, it's worth starting by saying that while a leadership election was always inevitable and necessary, it's pretty much the last thing the Conservatives need right now. As we saw following the downfall of Boris Johnson, leadership elections tend to encourage the party to fight itself. In this particular instance, there was a protracted leadership election in which 8 candidates publicly declared and made the first round. At each step, there were publicly televised debates, with each of the candidates trying to brand their fellow colleagues as unfit to run the country. By the time we got to the final 2, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, the mudslinging had intensified significantly, damaging Tory unity and hurting the overall perception of the party. Having learned the lesson from this experience, after the downfall of Truss, MPs only put one MP forward, Rishi Sunak, in order to try and prevent a repeat of this. This strategy wasn't without its own downsides though. The fact that Rishi Sunak was thrust into number 10 unopposed and without a single vote from the membership caused frustration from those on the right who had previously supported Liz Truss. They felt able to criticise him because of this, and often did throughout his tenure. The point we're trying to make here is that there were problems with both a long and a short-term leadership election, and in the end, both will end up hurting party unity in some way. Considering the level of factional infighting before the election, when the Tories had around 350 seats, you can only imagine what party unity will like now they've been reduced to 121 seats. The question now is which of these will cause the party the least damage? Well, among senior Tories, the current thought process is that a short leadership election would be preferred. Not only would this prevent too much infighting, but according to a senior Tory source, there's also a fear that the longer a leadership election lasts, the longer Reform UK have to establish themselves as the true alternative to Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. Speaking about the timing of such a contest further, a Tory source said, "If you wait until party conference or even Christmas, the problem is that you then come in as leader and instead of facing Starmer, you're suddenly having to first argue with Farage." However, it should be noted that there is also a contingent within the party that believes a longer leadership election would be better. A separate party source suggested that the longer leadership election would allow candidates to actually pitch themselves to the public in what they describe as a beauty contest. However, it seems, at least at the moment, that this isn't the current conventional wisdom. So, this is the theory at least, but when will we actually hear more about the upcoming leadership election? Well, the specifics of any such election is determined by the leader of the Backbench 1922 committee, which is just the fancy name of the committee that represents non-frontbench Conservative MPs. For the last few years, it was led by this man, Sir Graham Brady. However, a few months ago, he announced his intention to step down as an MP in the upcoming general election, something that he's now done, and means he will no longer lead the committee. The first step for the leadership election, then, is for the Tories to elect a new chairman of the committee, something that itself requires its own leadership election. This is expected to be done by mid-July, and as things stand, Geoffrey Clinton-Brown looks to be the favourite to succeed Sir Graham. Once the new chairman is in place, they can lay out the exact details of the leadership election, whether it's long or short, how many nominations each candidate requires in order to stand, and how any potential subsequent member votes will work. As we explained earlier, right now it seems that a short leadership election, meaning a new Tory leader by September, is the preferred outcome. However, we won't know whether this is the plan until we get a new 1922 committee chairman, which probably won't happen for a few weeks. Anyway, now we know the current state of the leadership election itself, it's worth moving on and having a look at who could realistically win the election, irrespective of how it's held. Previously, the main two names you'd often hear when discussing new leaders were Penny Mordaunt and Kemi Badenoch. However, following last week's election, Mordaunt is no longer an MP and is, therefore, ineligible to stand in the leadership election. On the other side of things, Badenoch did survive the leadership election, and it seems that she's still the favourite to win the election. She's popular on the right of the party, both among MPs and among the membership, and she actually did pretty well in the summer 2022 leadership election. However, there are a number of other right-wing candidates that look likely to stand and could potentially usurp her. The main two are both former Home Secretaries, Suella Braverman and Priti Patel. They too are popular on the right, and both were keen, in office, to demonstrate their credentials as being robust legislators when it came to small boats. On the centre ground though, there are notably fewer candidates that look likely to stand. The most notable one is perhaps Tom Tugendhat, someone who, in the 2022 leadership election, attempted to pitch himself as the Fresh Start candidate. Despite being more on the centre, he's not as well known as the other candidates, and previously struggled to get particularly far last time round. Ultimately, right now, with no candidates officially having declared their candidacy, it's too soon to get into exactly who's going to replace Sunak. Irrespective, we'll keep you updated with all the twists and turns in the imminent leadership election over the next few weeks.
Running a profitable online news brand that gives away free content is a little tricky. So recently we launched an online store where you can purchase copies of our magazine, Too Long. The thing is, setting up an e-commerce business is also pretty tricky. But fortunately, when it comes to websites and e-commerce, Skillshare is there to help. With me taking their very useful course, Shopify Essentials for Web Developers, when setting up the store. That's because Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives, with thousands of classes led by industry experts across film, illustration, design, freelance, productivity, and more. That means that Skillshare can help take your career, skills, hobbies, passions, or side hustles to the next level. There's hundreds of career-focused classes. That's courses from how to start a business to maximizing your workflow or digital marketing. The best news is that the first 500 people to use our link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial to Skillshare. So get started today.